Today, we're in the country. It's coming towards the end of the day, and we're going to get cosy around the campfire and listen to a few stories.
People, by your lifestyle, will see the different way you live. And that will provoke them to ask the story of why do you live differently? What does that look like?
I'm in West Sussex to talk to Andrew about the power of the human story.
Each of us have got stories to tell about how Christ made a change, made a difference in our lives.
And I'm here in Brighton to talk to Rachel about sharing our story.
Be your authentic, real self, genuinely with your friends, so share all of you, which includes sharing your experience of what it means to walk with Jesus.
This is Talking Jesus, training Christians to share our faith. Hey, nice.
What do you think?
Yeah, I love it.
Great look, aren't I?
So Rachel, in the last session we looked at the importance of being brand ambassadors for Jesus and how our friends and family can view our lives and how that's a great way to share our faith. But this session we're focusing on actually talking about our faith and why this is important.
Yeah, it's important. We discovered in our research, and we asked 1,500 practicing Christians how they came to faith, what were the key influences. And we discovered that for 36% of us, talking and having a conversation with a Christian was a key influence in bringing us to faith. In fact, it was the second most important influence. The first most important was growing up in a Christian family, 41% of us.
Right, but not everybody has the opportunity to grow up in a Christian family.
Yeah, completely. So if you don't grow up in a Christian family, the next most important thing that will bring you to faith is a conversation with someone like you or me, which is why actually talking and finding words is so important.
So, talking about faith conversations, what actually is that?
It's not like an extra conversation, it just happens in the normal ways that we chat about other things like shopping or the things we're seeing, but actually also being able to include into that God, faith, spiritual things, prayer, but doing it naturally in conversation so that they also can ask questions and it can go further and deeper for them.
Great. So I guess if God is part of my everyday life and they ask me how my week's been, for example, it's just an extension of that.
Yeah.
Amazing. So in the back of our minds, I guess we all know that we should probably be talking about Jesus more, but perhaps think it's best left to the professionals, the pastors, the vicars, the theologians. I mean, what's your take on that?
We're the best people simply because they know us. So yes, we might have an expert but why would someone listen to that expert? They wouldn't even know them. You're the person there, they trust you, they're going to trust what you say. That's why we have to find our voices for our friends and our family.
And I guess Jesus is actually the greatest example of that, because whilst he did speak in crowds, he was also very personal. He spoke to the individual. He was walking alongside them in their everyday life.
Yeah, he was great. He was great at spending time, giving time, like just spending time with an individual. He asked great questions. So that's another skill in these in a conversations, is to ask questions, find out where our friends are, not just assume. And he was good at that. And then he would bring in the pieces of truth and what he wanted to share of himself into that. So ask questions, listen, just like Jesus, and then bring in what we want to say into that.
And I guess thinking about what you're saying, it's your everyday.
Yeah.
And I guess, that for me, yesterday, for example, my husband fell off a ladder, hurt his arm. We prayed to God that it's not broken. And I guess talking to a non-Christian, I might have left out that we prayed for him part and just said, we spent the day in A&E, for example.
Yeah. And what we're actually saying is be your authentic, real self, genuinely with your friends, so share all of you, which includes sharing your experience of what it means to walk with Jesus and to use words and to share it as your story. So if you've prayed for something and seen an answer to prayer, share that. And especially for those who are open and interested, you've given them an opportunity to ask you questions and, if you like, to join in and find out more.
Amazing. Just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Hey, Javan, good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right?
Yeah.
Come on in.
Thanks. Andrew's a journalist traveling the world, talking to Christians who've been persecuted because of their faith. Earlier, Rachel was talking about how conversations with people can help them to make a decision to follow Jesus for themselves. Why do you think that might be?
Because all of us have got a story to tell. So if you're friends with somebody, they like you, hopefully, otherwise you're not really friends. So you become friends with them. They want to find out more about you. They want to find out what makes you tick. So that's the ideal opportunity to begin to share something where there's a common connection. And the best way for people to connect with that is not to talk about theology in the abstract or about God in the abstract, but to do what God himself did. God came in Jesus. He came in the flesh. He came with us. He lived with us. We have God in us. He's come and lived in me. So he's impacted my life. He's made a huge difference in my life. And each of us have got stories to tell about how Christ made a change, made a difference in our lives.
Well, for many of us, this is new territory, obviously. What would be your advice of where to start?
I would say don't start at the beginning. People don't necessarily want your entire life story, but start with an instant in your life where God helped you. It doesn't have to be your conversion, but some point where God had to step in and rescue you. Something that your audience will connect to and relate with. So it might be trouble in your marriage. It might be trouble with health. Who knows what it could be? All kinds of things. For me, it was getting lost in the desert in Sudan or being held up by bandits in Liberia. God rescued me on those occasions, and those are good stories worth telling. So there's a point at which you've got a great story to tell. Begin there.
Well, now I want to hear everything about you being lost in the desert. But, what if I don't have a story that's quite so dramatic as that?
What we've all got is our humanity. And in your life, God has rescued you at some point in your life. All of us who are Christians have been met by Jesus at some point. What other people might not have is God meeting them, but they can have that. And what you're doing is opening them up to the possibility that actually you're not on your own in this life. We all go through stuff, but there's a God who loves you who can get involved in your life. Now, they need to hear your story to know that.
For those that are on the course at the moment, where's a good place for them to start?
Well, start by being intentional, and you already have because you're on the course. So you want to do this well, practice. Storytellers need practice. Look, if you're going to learn to play the guitar, you don't just pick it up and produce a wonderful melody. You have to learn. So here it's very simple. Stick yourself in front of your mirror, but the face you're looking at is the face of the friend you've got in mind. Tell your story. Have a look at your watch. Make sure you're not overdoing it. It's not too long. Just practice it. Talk about the crisis in your life, whatever it was. It doesn't have to be a point of conversion. It's just some way in which God met you and God helped you. Talk about how he helped you and talk about how things have moved on since then.
Would that not come across as maybe quite contrived? Practicing in front of the mirror, making it perfect. What do you think?
Well, it's never going to be perfect because we're not. But it's a good idea to practice. It's not contrived, it's intentional. And that's what you're doing. You're saying, look, I may not be an evangelist, I'm not, but God's called us all to be witnesses. And if you're going to be a witness, and if you're called to give evidence in a court of law, my goodness me, you would think it through before you went up there and started to do it. It takes the sting out of it. So just have a go out loud, say what you want to say, see if it works, see if it sounds good. If it doesn't, have another go, and then look for the opportunity because then you're ready for it. It's just about readiness.
Meanwhile, Joanna is with some friends around the campfire in the Lake District.
So we're talking about stories in our story. So Roy, why are stories so important?
I think the way God's made us is we are fascinated by other people because God's created us that way. And so when you hear someone's story, there's something about it that endears them, that it's personal, it's real, it's authentic. It's just got so much about it that I just think it has tremendous power, which is why this is all about your story.
So Dave, you've got quite an interesting story, haven't you? You had quite a big life change after a long time.
Yeah, after working 25 years, was made redundant and got the opportunity to start a new business or buy an existing business and to start a new life, really, business life. So.
And how's it been?
Yeah, keep your eye on that hot cross bun while you're telling that story. I've got my eye on that.
You've got your eye on that.
And so from that, kind of God's blessed me and my family with totally different direction, but really felt that God was in it. Yeah. From the start,
and
really.
When you tell people that story, how do they respond?
Well, they look at you kind of a bit sceptical at you at first because the timing of it was so perfect. I was, I think, with being out of work and not knowing what to do and then transitioning into this, they kind of look at it as, oh, wow, you know, you must have had quite a miraculous sign, but it wasn't. It was just a step of faith, if you will, and which allowed me then to share that story with other people who probably never thought of going into something like that.
That's really interesting because it says in 1 Peter that people, by your lifestyle, will see the different way you live. And that will provoke them to ask the story of why do you live differently? What does that look like? And it says, be prepared to tell your story. In other words, give a reason for the hope that's in you. So your story in that setting is amazing. It is the most powerful thing you have because this is what God has done in my life. I cannot deny it. God has done this. So when someone asks the question about your business, you then have a reason to tell the story. So it's like, because this has happened, it provokes the question. And when that question is provoked, you tell the story.
Yeah,
And
I'd agree.
it just has a big effect on people.
It does, because it moves beyond opinion, doesn't it? Like, I remember my father always used to say that a man with experience is never at the mercy of a man with an opinion. You know, that's the point, isn't it? Stories, real experience cuts through opinion. Powerful stuff, isn't it, when you've had an experience? And, you know, that's your experience now. People have all kinds of opinions, but it cuts through all of that story, doesn't it? It gets beyond debates to real evidence, real experience, yeah.
And no one can argue with that, can they?
Exactly.
No, I think it's personal, and if it's personal to you, then they see it as I can relate to it in a way that, oh yeah, I can understand why you've done that, and yeah, perhaps there is something that's kind of flicked a switch in their brain.
What's going on?
In there.
And Phil, your story is a bit more of a struggle. So do you think people relate to hearing about struggle better than they do hearing about success?
Yeah, I think often it can be. I think you think you might be on your own in your struggles and you might be sharing that with somebody and you realise that actually they can relate to you and you can then share how you maybe come out of that and how God maybe worked with in that situation as well. I think people can identify with it.
They certainly can.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to share a little bit out of your story?
I think it's just spending time with people and opening a conversation up, asking them what they've done on a weekend, what they've done in the evenings, and I think they find often people open up, and from that, even if you open up yourself sometimes and share what you've done on a weekend, it brings in the conversation, and you can talk from that really.
So you think in John 9 about the blind man, he gets healed, so he's got an experience, and after that, the religious teachers come after him, asking complicated questions, challenging him intellectually. And he's got that great line. He just says, well, I don't know the answer to your questions, but one thing I know, I was blind and now I can see. And there's no response to that, is there?
No.
I spend quite a bit of my time in sort of university contexts, and there's a lot of arguments and debates to be had there. But I found that when I share out of my own experience, it kind of moves the conversation beyond just academic debate. And I recently had a conversation with an academic friend, and I just shared a little bit out of my own experience. I've had a tough time of bereavement this year, and just shared about how God's helped me through that and given me hope beyond it. And it really resonated with him. Then it turned out that he'd had a similar experience, and suddenly our conversation was way beyond a theory or a fact.
Because it moves to another level, doesn't it?
It does.
And some people think they haven't got a good story. I've been good, I've done all this stuff. And I say to them, listen, that is not the art to making friends or building relationships. The key to making friends and building relationships is you just need to be interested in people's lives. And when you're interested in people's lives, you'll discover something of their story, and then it will give you an opportunity to tell your story. And so you may say, hey, I don't know, I never did this, I never went to prison, this didn't happen in my life, I'm just an ordinary guy. Hey, listen, God has done some amazing things in your life. Be interested in other people, and they'll ask you to tell your story.